Edward Marsh had served as the lighthouse keeper on Raven Island for 17 years, and in that time, the sea had revealed many of its secrets to him. But what happened in the autumn of 1987 changed the very understanding of reality he had carried within him since childhood. Raven Island lay 3 miles from the mainland, a scrap of rock overgrown with stunted pines, buffeted by every wind of the Atlantic. Edward lived there with his wife Martha and 8-year-old daughter Lily. Once every 2 weeks, the fisherman Jonas brought them supplies and mail, and the rest of the time they were left to themselves, the sea, and the eternal light of the lighthouse, which Edward maintained with religious punctuality. On the night of October 23rd, a storm broke out unlike anything the old-timers could remember in decades. Waves crashed over the rocks. The wind howled through the cracks of the lighthouse tower like 1,000 hungry throats. Edward didn't sleep all night, watching over the lamp, and toward morning, when the storm began to subside, he went down to the shore to check whether the pier had been washed away. It was there, among the seaweed and debris of some wrecked vessel, that he found it. At first, Edward mistook the find for a strangely shaped stone or piece of coral, but as he leaned closer, he realized his mistake. The object was alive, the size of a human fist, translucent, with internal veins that pulsed with a faint phosphorescent light. Its shape constantly shifted, as if the creature couldn't decide what it wanted to be: a starfish, an embryo of some unknown being, or simply a clot of strange substance washed up from unimaginable depths by the storm. Edward knew a sane man would leave the find and return to the house. But there was something mesmerizing about this object, a quiet, almost melodic hum that he seemed to hear not with his ears, but directly inside his skull. A voice without words, calling, promising. He brought the creature home and hid it in an old toolbox in the lighthouse basement. From that day, everything began to change. Edward paid no attention to the first strangeness. Martha, always a calm and level-headed woman, suddenly began complaining of dreams, vivid recurring visions of boundless black waters where eyeless creatures swam, their mouths full of needle-like teeth. She woke up in a sweat, whispering names Edward had never heard: Dagon, Hydra, Cthulhu. Words foreign and heavy, as if carved from primordial stone. "It's just nerves," she said in the mornings, stirring her coffee with a trembling hand. The storm frightened us all. But Edward noticed how she began standing at the window for long periods, staring at the ocean with an expression that could be mistaken for longing, or perhaps recognition. Lily changed even more drastically. The cheerful girl who used to love drawing horses and flowers now filled her sketchbook pages with strange spiral patterns and creatures with tentacles instead of limbs. When her father asked what they were, she answered with disturbing seriousness. "They're showing me, Daddy. They say I'm their child, that we all came from the water and must return." Edward tried to convince himself this was just a child's fantasy, spurred by stories of the storm and shipwreck debris. But at night, he would go down to the basement and stare for long periods at the creature in the box, which now glowed brighter, and the hum in his head had become clearer, almost articulate. "Free us. We have waited so long. We are that which existed before the stars, that which will exist after them. Let us in, and you shall become part of eternity." One night in early November, Edward woke to find the bed beside him empty. Martha had disappeared. Gripped by panic, he searched the entire house and lighthouse until he found her at the very edge of the cliff, facing the raging ocean. She stood motionless like a statue, her lips moving silently, forming words in a language that shouldn't have existed in a human throat. "Martha!" he shouted, grabbing her shoulders. She turned, and there was no recognition in her eyes, only emptiness, bottomless as the deepest ocean trench. "It's calling me home, Edward," she whispered in a voice that was hers and yet foreign at the same time. "Don't you hear it? We all come from there. We are all just temporary forms that water will reclaim before taking back what belongs to it." That night, Edward first truly feared for his family's sanity. He decided to destroy the find, burn it, drown it in the deepest part of the sea, anything to rid himself of this cursed creature. But when he went down to the basement, the box was empty. The creature had vanished, leaving only a wet trail leading to the stairs. The next 3 days passed in a nightmare that Edward later couldn't fully piece together in his memory, as if his mind itself was erasing the most terrifying moments, protecting itself from madness. Martha had almost stopped speaking, sitting for days at the window facing the sea, humming something under her breath, a melody without beginning or end that made Edward's blood run cold. Lily covered all the walls of her room with drawings of the same creature, gigantic, with tentacles instead of a face, seated on a throne of bones at the ocean floor. "Rillier is awakening, Daddy," she said with a smile that was no longer childlike. "The time is coming soon. Great Cthulhu awaits his hour, and we are his heralds here on land." Jonas, arriving with supplies, didn't recognize the family that met him at the dock. He hastily turned his boat around and never appeared again. Edward later learned that the fisherman was telling people in town about the cursed island and the creature in human form he'd seen, instead of the Marsh girl. By the end of the second week of November, Edward had stopped sleeping. He wandered the lighthouse, hearing voices from the very walls. Ancient, alien voices telling of times before humanity's existence, of cities beneath the water built by non-human hands, of gods sleeping in the depths, waiting for their awakening. And then, on the night of the new moon, when the ocean was unusually calm, unnaturally calm, as if holding its breath, Edward heard the call become unbearable. He could no longer resist. Taking a kerosene lamp, he went down to the water where his family waited. Martha and Lily both stood knee-deep in the icy waves, holding hands, faces turned toward the horizon. "It's time," Martha said, and her voice was clear, as it had been in the days when he first met her. "It's waiting for all of us, Edward. It has waited for millions of years. Time to go home." Edward stepped into the water after his family, feeling the icy waves burn his legs. But strangely, this no longer frightened him. He too heard the call, too felt the pull of the abyss, too began to understand that the human form was merely a temporary shell placed over something far more ancient and eternal. He took his wife and daughter by the hand, and the three of them walked into the sea, which rose higher and higher, to the waist, to the chest, to the neck. And in the final moment, as the water was about to close over their heads, Edward suddenly saw clearly, saw the truth the creature had concealed from him all these weeks. Martha and Lily weren't transforming into monsters. They had been dead for 3 days, since the very night the creature disappeared from the box. Their bodies moved, spoke, smiled, but their eyes were cloudy, glassy corpse eyes, and their skin was a bluish gray, bloated from decomposing in salt water. Whatever had taken control of their minds had never intended to transform them into something new. It had simply been wearing their bodies like puppets, using dead flesh to lure the last living soul on the island, Edward himself, into the depths, where something awaited for which no name existed in any human language. He tried to scream, tried to break free, but it was too late. Tentacles, invisible in the dark water, had already wrapped around his ankles, while the voices of his wife and daughter, now speaking in an inhuman unison chorus, whispered the last words he would hear in his life. "Welcome home, Edward. Now you too are part of us. Forever." The lighthouse on Raven Island went dark that same night and never lit again. When a commission arrived a month later, the house was empty, but perfectly tidy, as if the occupants had simply stepped out for a moment and were expected to return any time. In the basement, they found only a damp stain of irregular shape and a strange, sweet rotten smell whose source was never determined. And in the weather station records on the mainland that night, an anomaly was recorded. For several seconds, the compasses of all vessels within a 20-mile radius pointed not north, but straight down toward the ocean floor, as if something down there in the impenetrable darkness of the abyssal depths possessed a magnetism more powerful than the Earth itself. No one ever learned what happened to the Marsh family. Some spoke of an accident, others of madness brought on by isolation and storms, but the old-timers of the coastal towns, who knew the ancient legends of what lurks in the ocean's darkest depths, only shook their heads grimly and tried not to go to sea on moonless nights, when the water grows unusually still, and from the very bottom comes a barely audible hum, a call that only the chosen can hear, and from which there is no salvation for those who have once let it into their minds.